Hey everyone. So let's continue. Our application is working as it was a second ago, and let's just kind of go to the users folder here and look at the classes we had made, the service that we had made, and all of it. Awesome, good stuff. And just to make sure we see it working, there it is again. So we're going to integrate this to the backend, and the first piece has to do with the folder directory itself. Um, Within the folder directory of the app users app, I'm going to create a new folder within it called public, and I am going to move all the files from the Angular folder, the users app Angular folder, into that public folder I made. And I'm doing this because the users app folder now is going to become the actual this folder centered right here, the users app folder, is going to become the actual server folder. So initially, we're just going to keep the public folder here, and we're going to create our server file here, and that's it. But later on, our server file will essentially kind of break it apart and pull all these pieces and make it a true-looking MVC. But initially, I'm just going to have the server file, the node modules for the server, and the package.json file. So here's a file directory that we have, the users folder. There's a public folder that I put the Angular app in. Let's go to the terminal here. I had it running. I had Angular running. I'm going to stop Angular from running. We are in the root directory of a users folder now. Let's see, npm init to initialize a package file. Name of the application, same thing. Sure. Why not? Whatever. We don't need to worry about those for now. Cool. So this made for us a package.json file, and this is there so that when I go back to here to the terminal and start installing all the packages, I can see the versions here. For example, let's see, npm install. By the way, --save is going to cause that file to update. Otherwise, it won't. Express is the first thing. And just stop for a second and take a look at this file. Did it not update? What's going on? Come on. There we go. Took a second. So there it is showing up that it's saved, or rather --save allows it to write here the version of the Express project. So in case I want to rebuild it later, I can use the exact same version. So things don't break. So we did Express. We should do Mongoose because we'll definitely use that. We should do body parser, which is so again, Express is the actual framework. Mongoose is the kind of the shell, if you want to call it, or the application we will use to talk to Mongo, the database. Body parser is for the requests coming into Node and parsing through them to get the body content of those post requests. And I think that's it. I do like using Morgan because it just kind of does a little bit of console logging for me. So we're going to add that also. Morgan is really just a middleware that every time there's requests coming in, it'll just kind of log them on the terminal, of the server terminal. So it's just convenient is all. Okay, so we have those up and running, or rather installed. There they are. We're missing here the server file, so we'll put here server.js. Now we have the server file. Now let's start building some things. So let's create the Express project, object, require Express. And just a moment here. Okay. Let's create the app project out of the Express object, which is execute Express. There we are. Okay, cool. Let's create Mongoose, which is equal to require Mongoose. So this whole thing is going to be about the database. So MongoDB. This kind of Mongo database. There we go. So I'm going to just write it in right now. I want to connect to Mongoose, and to do so, we have to call our mongoose.connect believe it's something along the lines of, let me check my notes, MongoDB localhost. And then the schema that we want to use, I'm going to use the user's schema. And essentially, when I run the server.js file, it'll import Express, it'll create the object of Express for our application, it will import Mongoose, it will connect the Mongoose database, which I actually have. Mongo is already installed, and I'm running the server here. So all I did here is sudo mongod, and it runs the server. I just open up a new terminal for that. Okay. So this piece is for Express, that piece is for Mongo. We should also do the modeling, the models and the schemas rather for it, but let's skip it for a moment. Let's do, just add some things here. We might need path, so I'm just going to require it now. Let's see, body parser definitely. So let body parser equal to require body parser. Okay, and we need to configure that. So op.use is what we run to add middleware into the Express application itself. So this one is going to be use the body parser object that's going to return us an object when I do this, or rather a callback function, which will run. I won't get too far into details on that one, but essentially this whole block of code is returning a function, and it's going to use that function in the order of which the Express project runs from top to bottom. And so every request essentially goes through these kind of calls. So we also need the body parser.json, change the things, change the data to JSON type, data, and I think that's it. Now we need to create a static folder. So this is the unique piece. My public folder is here, which has my application for my Angular application, but there's no, well, there's an index file here somewhere within the file directory, but the Angular project, which is in my public folder now, essentially might as well be an application called public. But anyways, there's no index file to point to directly here. So what we actually need to do is, in our Angular application, let's see, let's go to public folder. We need to build. So ng build would build it and create a dish folder, which we can point to as a static folder. But every time we save Angular, we want that to rebuild, because we want to keep pointing to the static folder, or rather this folder that was generated off of build. That's going to represent our Angular app through our Express server. So we're going to say ng build-w for watch, and it's going to watch for all the files within the public folder. If they get saved, it'll rebuild. And the nice and convenient thing about this is that it will only build the pieces that need to be rebuilt, not the whole thing. So initially this takes a while, like you see here, but after a while when you save, it's quick rebuilds. Cool. That created this right here, this folder. And now I can make this my static folder, and there's index.html. So here we can say app.use express.static, and then the file directory should be directory, CRUD directory, plus the directory of the public folder / distribution folder. And that sets a static folder. Also, we do want to set up a kind of like a catch-all route at the very bottom here, which is going to app.all is essentially saying like any kind of requests, if it's a GET request or a POST request or anything like that, any kind of route, I want it to have the request, the response object, the next object, and I want the value, or rather what it to be is to respond.send file, and I want it to go to so back to the same directory we talked about, public, distribution, index.html. So this little piece right here is saying if the routes did not catch for any of the routes, like a GET request for users or a POST for users, if all those fail, essentially redirected back to this file, the index.html file, and this is used for all the routing. So if we do routing on the Angular app and we're switching between different components and those kind of things, we need this piece here to let the server know that the request that it came to the server was actually a request for Angular. So we just redirect back to static, and then Angular would take care of the route. So what does that mean? That means that Every request you make, every redirect you make, every route request you make, it first goes through your, well, obviously goes through your server, but it first goes through your routes, and then hits this as a catch-all. It'll make more sense a little later. So we create our static folder. We'll probably have tons of errors. We didn't even start the server yet. That's nice. Let's do node server, but we'll say node mon server. So it monitors the server file. In case it changes, it updates. In case it breaks, it waits for a save and then restarts the server. And any time today would be great. So our application is no longer going to work because we are no longer serving it. But well, actually, we're not even listening here for anything. So this is going to be the way we can tell the server to listen to that port, and also I'm going to put a callback because it expects a callback as a second parameter. And the callback is going to be simply a console log that says server running at 1337. I'm just doing this for more peace of mind. I just want to see the server's running. I want to see it every time it's restarting, and that's why I put it up there. Otherwise, we don't need really this piece. Rather, we don't need this little block right here. It could be like that, but we're going to keep it. Let's see, server. There we go, why not? Okay, so now that we have these pieces, server's listening, and we're good on those, assuming we already know the structure of our application, and we kind of do, it wouldn't be a bad idea to really just kind of build out the Mongo piece of it right here. So after we connect, we need to also define a schema for Mongo. So we'll create a user schema and set that to equal to a new instance of mongoose.schema, I believe. And then from that, we have the object of the schema. And I don't remember these exactly how we had them, so I may have to kind of peek into our user, this file here. Essentially, I just want to see what all the pieces are. And by the way, I know I predetermined here default values, and I think that's fine, but we won't need them moving forward because all of the objects we make will come from the server. Yeah, they all will come from the server. We don't really need this piece, but that's okay for now. Let's go back here. I'm going to add these here for a moment just so I can visually see them. So the schema is going to have a few pieces. You'll have, we don't need ID because it's going to give it for us. So first name will be a type of string, and let's put them all true for first name. There we go. First name, last name, email, editable, you need that there. But this is a type of Boolean. Required true, sure, required. Do we want an email, first and last name? For now, what the heck, why not? We could always modify these later. But let's just assume we need those. I'm not going to use a Mongoose validator. You could also import mongoose-validator, which is a real nice way to validate all of these things on the server side, which of course you would want to do. Validation on the front end is great, but it's only for the front end. People can bypass that if they know how. So it's not that it's safe, it's more that the front end is visually appealing. The back end is really for the true safety. So anyways, this is something to note. So now we created the user schema. We have not really, all we did is just create an object called user schema, which is following a certain kind of a certain kind of class that it created the object from, added all these pieces to it, but we have not yet defined it in Mongoose. So I believe it's mongoose.model, and then we give it the name of the model, such as user, and then the name of the schema that we just created, which is user schema. So now this is setting. Also getting would be the same thing with one parameter passed to it, like so. So this would be this would be getting the schema. This is defining the schema into the model object of Mongoose. This one here is getting it, but actually this is setting and getting. It will do both. So I'm just going to do it separately. There's a user object. So this is the user object that I just registered in Mongoose. So the idea is that at this point I can call in the user object dot find, for example, and kind of do those commands. So obviously it makes sense that I need to define all this stuff before my routing, right? Because I'm going to use this object in my routes to get all the users and all those kind of things. So this is why I personally like to show off the Express project in one page like this without first kind of separating out the pieces, because you see here the order of operation and you see why the order of operation exists. I have to create the Express object before I can grab the app out of it, right? I have to create the Mongo server entirely and have the user object available before I ever request the user, before I ever do any routes, right? So if the entire route section that I have here was in a require file from somewhere else, I need to make sure that that file required is after static, after body parser, after Mongo database. So, okay. And the path, I guess it can be here, but I'm going to put it further up, just because we don't need it down there. Separate these out. Okay, cool. So there it is. Mongo database is kind of set, more or less. The body parser is set, and really, the body parser we could put even over the Mongo database, because it's really just setting up. It doesn't really matter, right? The order operation between these two pieces doesn't matter, but it does matter for the other ones. Same with the static. It doesn't matter so much, but I'm going to leave it down here, because once you define a static folder, it doesn't matter until we listen to it. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to put the static folder there, body parser there. I'm not 100% sure of the true proper order. I think it doesn't really matter up to a certain extent, as long as you're not having things down here, or rather things up here that require things that were generated down here, obviously. Okay, cool. So let's keep going. Let's make sure that we have something going on here. 1337 loaded the entire thing. Of course it would, right? So we're good, because the static folder is loading this piece. So it's loading the out of the static, in this folder, the static folder, it's loading the Angular application itself, and that's why it's working right now. And just to test it, here we go. Awesome. Delete, 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 create. Awesome. So it's working. Obviously, it's only working on the front end. So if I refresh, it's all refreshing the data from the front end. So we're going to connect to the back end, but my point being is I'm going to create all the routes, or some of the routes rather. What am I trying to say here? I'm going to be using Mongo as I'm creating this route. So we're going to start from the front, going to back. As I mentioned earlier, with the front end, we made a bunch of adjustments that we shouldn't have had to do it if we kind of were building the back end first, but that's okay. So let's start off with the user. The service is fine. All these are making requests out to the server. No problem there, so far at least. Let's go to the user component. The user component has the array of users here. Let's comment these out. We're not going to use a built-in arrays. So if I refresh this, it should be empty. There we go. So, all right, we comment this out because get users goes out to the server. So yeah, so let's uncomment this and go out to do an HTTP request to get the users. And when the user when the promise comes back, let's subscribe to it and let's grab the users. And let's also put the catch here. In case there is an error from the server, we can console log it when it happens. Cool. So I also want this to run as soon as this initializes. And essentially what it's doing, it's redefining this.users, which is line 11 up here. It's redefining it with whatever object comes back from the server. And because my user service, when I'm doing this retrieve, get users, this should really be at the top. I am changing it to a promise. I'm also doing maps, so all the data changes to JSON type format, because it's essentially like raw data when it comes in. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to refresh here, and nothing happens. And yeah, nothing happens, because I have no data in the database. But I also don't know if it worked in any way. So what would you do? I think what we should do is actually put some logging here. So even though this is happening, is it even hitting the server? So no, not at all. We don't even have a route for it. So let's add the route. app.get/users, because that's the route I'm calling on. Request, response, next. And there it is. And I'm going to copy paste this because we're going to run this a few times. I'm going to comment these out for now, but I don't want to have to rewrite that every time. On the get request, I'm going to console log it's obviously server because this console log will only show up with our terminal, but I'm just going to do it anyways because I'm supposed to have it. This is a GET request of /users, and I guess that's the point I was saying that Morgan will do this for me, so I don't think we even need this. Let's delete it. Let's do just response.json true or empty array because this is expecting to get an array back. So let's go to, so let's see that. That's good. Let's go here. Let's refresh the page. Refresh. Let's go here. Nothing. I'm not sure if this actually just now worked. So yeah, let's console log. This is a GET request of /users. Yeah, it's into the server, and it's responding perhaps with an empty array, and really it's responding with an empty array, so what's going to do with that? Okay, well, let's see. I could hard code the object here, but it just will take a little bit of time. Let's do the post route so we can add something, and then we'll go from there. Excuse me. So let's uncomment that piece. Let's console log this there. Oh, you know what? I talked about adding Morgan here, but I never actually did it. That's why. Debugger or logger? It's not really debugger. This is debugger. Logger. Wait, let's just say Morgan. Let's see. Morgan is equal to require Morgan, and then I believe it's Morgan of dev. Oh, it's app.use Morgan of dev that's been added into our chain here. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Let's refresh. And there's what I'm talking about. That little piece right here is Morgan doing that console log for us. So it's kind of nice. It'll tell us it's a GET request of users. Still nice to have our own console logs because we know we hit the right route on our side. Cool. Well, let's do the next one. Let's do the post users. I'm going to console log to that as well to make sure we're there. This is a post to users, and this should have also users or the user object. So rec.body is going to give me the user object I'm posting to it. So let's go to our application. So where are we doing the post? The create is done here, and it's doing a push to our array. So the user object gets all the way to this point, but we don't need to do that anymore. We need to call to the service dot create, and that's going to return us back the promise. So we need to do the then and the catch. So I'm going to copy paste this little piece right here. But when this responds with actually the user itself, perhaps, or response with Boolean or status, perhaps, I'm just going to say here status, I could do a little chain event of like if it was successful, if it wasn't, do something else. But for simplicity, I'm just going to say, hey, if you created something and the server responded because you created something, let's just call this. Let's just make sure we get our user component to update itself. So if that happens, let's call on this.user get users and update yourself. Now there's an error. Oh, because the create method expects that user object to be passed to it. Cool. Let's see. We have a console log, so that should work. So let's see. First at first.com. Submit. Now it was added. ID 37 doesn't really make sense. I'm going to refresh the page, and it wasn't. So let's see what happened. Oh, it did post it. So that's good with an ID because we just kind of make up one at the front end. We don't really need that ID anymore. Yeah, we don't need that ID anymore. The Mongo is going to give us the ID, so I'm going to delete this piece right here. And I think that's all I should need. Let's see if that breaks anything. Yeah, that should be fine. So let's go to our server. We know that this is the object because we can see it here, console log, that we're getting back. And there it is now without the ID piece. Cool. So since the server now has that object, we know rec.body is the object we want to save in the database. We have the user object available to us there. User.create. The object we're going to create is literally this object. So I'm going to copy rec.body right there. And then this should have the callback. First is error. Second is the document return. Awesome. And yep, awesome. So the first is the error. Second is the user object that it returns. So here we can say if error, then response.json error, else response.json user, perhaps. Yeah, we could put return there. I think it's a little more explicit, but I don't think it's needed, but that's okay. Let's just put it on there. So if there's an error, if this first parameter passed in was more than a null object, then it's going to return us the error to the front end. If not, it's going to return us the user front end. That's great. So once we create with post, essentially we're done. We're responding back. And yes, in theory, we could actually do another user.find, grab all the users, and just pass back the user array from here. But I'm just going to let each one of these routes do their own thing. And by the way, this thing is responding still an empty array always, so we got to change that. So user.find, we're going to find all of the objects, and then this is the callback again. So let's see, error, and then the response object. So ERR, and then the next one is users. And there we go. So response.json is going to respond with users. That should be it. Let's put that there. Okay, cool. Get users. This is create user. This is just for the routing. Anyways, cool. So let's see what happens now. I'm going to refresh this page. Refresh. Let's see. So we're not really console log. Yeah, get users is console logging. Oh, we never actually ran this, so it's not really return anything. Because the server had to refresh, restart. First at first.com. Submit. There it is, and the ID is, so check this out, that's working because we know that ID is not something I had to put in there. It is Mongo creating the object and Mongo giving back the object with the ID object, the ID piece to it. Awesome. Now, destroy is not going to work. It's going to work maybe on the front end, but if I refresh, it's going to be there. Edit's not going to work. It's going to work on the front end, but if I refresh, it's going to be back to the previous object. So cool. So create is working. Awesome. So, and it's going to the database, which is great, because if I refresh here, it gives me the new set of data from the database. So, right on. So let's keep going. The next piece that I think would make sense to create would be easy one, would be the destroy. So, destroy user. Sounds so mean. Okay, so we're going to create a route called delete route of /users. So now the CRUD operation for destroy, I believe, is /users/ID, which is going to be the params object. So rec.body is the body content, rec.params the params object, and .id, because I called it ID here, I need to look for that. If I were to call this x, then I would be looking for rec.params.x. If I were to call this abc, rec.params.abc. But I'm looking for something that makes a lot more sense. It's going to be an ID, so why not call it ID? So this represents the ID, supposedly. So let's just do that and say server, this is a delete of /users/ID, and then ID is this thing I'm about to log. Cool. And I'm not returning, so the server's just going to hang here and time out, but that's okay. Let's refresh. Of course, it's still not going to work because I'm just changing, I'm creating the route in the back end. I need to go to the front end now and make sure that the delete on the server.js, whoops, sorry about that. The delete, oh yeah, we got to fix that too, by the way, but let's just go to the user components. Let's look at the destroy method. So this is the user we want to destroy. And the cool thing about this, if we look at the user, it's the user that came from the database. So if I hit destroy, why do we not have the console log up? What the heck am I doing? Okay, so if I hit destroy here, there it is. That object is the one came from the database, and there is the underscore ID that I'm going to use to find the user in the database and destroy them. All right. So on destroy here, we're going to call our service dot destroy. Destroy is expecting a user object. So here's your user object, and this is expecting, of course, because it's going to give me back a promise. I'm going to promise. There we go. So as opposed to all this stuff, we don't need to do all that stuff at all. We're going to, when the server responds, for now, if it responds like yes, it happened or some error happened, doesn't matter. If it responds successfully, we'll do this. If it throws an error and gives us back an error, it'll do this. That's fine for now. So if you deleted a user successfully, all right, great. So call this so you can update your user component users list. Awesome. So let's get rid of that. We know that's working. Let's go to our service. And here's the destroy method. Here's the user object. There's an issue here. It does not exist on type user. What? Beg to defer. All right, let's see. It must know something. Let's console log that, and let's console log also user dot underscore ID. Well, it's not going to let me do that. So what do we have in user? This is nice that we can just call on. I think it will still work. I'm not sure why the heck it's doing that. Maybe it just doesn't understand or doesn't know the... Ah, right. Because the user object we define here does not have the underscore ID property, which I'm going to define as string, and initially set to an empty string. Yeah, so that kind of sucks because the server is going to need to mess with that. Let's see how that goes. We'll see. So I'll explain that in a second. So at least we have this so far. So if we go here and take a look at this, yeah, good stuff. When I hit destroy, it passes the object. I get the string. That's great. So I can delete something. Let's just go and delete it for now. So this is calling the server. Let's go to the server file. The delete method. We know that this is the right thing. Well, we don't. Let's see. There it is. We do know it's the right thing. So how do we do it? We call the user object dot. What is it? Let's see. Dot delete. Delete one. I need to actually look at my notes. Delete one. And we're going to delete the thing that has the ID object with a value of whatever this thing gives us. So go find that thing and delete it, and give me the callback with the, let's see, callback should. Let's put status here, status, and just see what the heck that is that it's returning back. Refresh. Let's delete it. It did something. It did a delete. Status is null. Let's refresh and see if that still exists in the server. And it doesn't. It deleted. So I guess the only thing it's really returning, I wonder, is it returning something as a second parameter? I should just look at the documentation. Really, there shouldn't really be guessing here, but I guess it's a way to do it. Oh, yeah, it returned a little bit of something, huh? The something is the entire object that tells us that it's successfully deleted and all the data about the deletion. Awesome. That's good to know. We don't really need it, but we could say here this is... wait, one second. Oh, it's not really status. So that thing is the error object that it gives us back. And the second piece is the... I don't know. The data. I'm going to call it data. I'm not sure the how they're referring it. But either way, I'm going to do the same kind of copy paste here of saying if there was an error, then send the error. If there was no error, then send true. Again, we would be a little more explicit here of how we would do it depending on more details about our application, but I'm going to keep it simple for now. So once this is delete, once we have deleted something, the front end is going to make a call and grab a new set of users, and that's why this keeps updating. So if I refresh this, because I deleted that one earlier when I clicked on it, it goes away. Awesome. Now I'm a little worried about create, so let's see. a@a.com, submit, refresh. Yeah, so it's not creating it because I believe when we call on in the new component, we create a new instance of user. We're giving it the underscore ID property. So it's like we're kind of creating a temporary one on the front end, and we need it there so that the object always reflects that piece. But on the back end, every time we create something, we need to strip that piece off before we create it. So on the create method here, rec.body.id, can we just delete? How do you delete a property? Let's see. JavaScript, delete property of object. So it looks like it's just something like delete that. And I am not trusting that right now because that seems a little crazy. So we're going to console log that twice. And oh, it worked. Look at that. So there's the object beforehand, and there's the object afterwards. Yeah, that would delete works fine. Oh, something good. Maybe I remember that, but it's been a long time, so I don't remember. Okay, so that's an easy way to go around it. I think that's okay. The thing is that the front end TypeScript strongly typed language needs to know the pieces, and I want to be able to just kind of make them on the fly on the new method. So that's fine for now. I think that's totally fine. Are we on the server? There it is. So we do need a delete piece there. We do need that there. I'm gonna get rid of that and save it. Let's go back here and make sure that destroy works. Destroy is working. Let's refresh. Good stuff. Create is working. Destroy is working. Good stuff. So create is working. Destroy is working. Retrieve all is working. Edit is the last piece left. So let's see. That is going to be a put request, and that is going to expect /users/ID. You're going to pass the ID through the URL if you want to keep a RESTful route pattern, which we do. We're going to console log this thing. And it's a server put or patch, but I think put is the one we're using right now. So /users as that ID. Let's console log the ID of the parameters, and let's also let's console log also the user that we're updating. Rec.body should give us the user. So if you remember earlier, when we were messing with this edit piece, we were passing back and forth the original user and the edit version. I don't need that anymore. Well, I do still need to have the user edit, so I can modify that and only update it when I need it. But when I call back up through the chain of events here, I don't need to pass the user, the original one, because the one I'm editing everything except for its ID, its unique ID, and I'm using that to find it in the database. So this emit is no longer needing that, it just needs user edit. We still need to do the copy and everything like that, so if we cancel, we don't need to do that, but we just need this piece here. So there it is, user edit. So we're still going to set that to false. It's irrelevant, but we're going to set it false. We're still going to call user event, update user event, to pass up the user edit onto the parent of edit, which is the list component .html. List component is going to call update user event, and it will update the event and pass the event in of the thing that we're passing in, which is event is really the object we're passing, but we have to use the word event here. So this is for the user list component.ts, and update is going to call update and pass the user singular there, sir. There it is, because it's one user I'm passing up. And it's going to call update user event onto whatever is calling the user list element. So the user component is calling that. So let's go here, or rather, let's go to the template version of this. So, whoa, what am I doing? User.component.html. There it is. Update event is there. It's calling update, so it's calling the update event. So let's go to the user.component.ts, and let's look at update. There is update. So we can console log user singular, and as opposed to doing all this stuff, which we don't need to anymore, we're going to call on our user service and call on update. We're going to pass it the user we want, and then same thing. We're going to say, hey, if it was successfully updated, give me a status back. Yep, it was good. Then good stuff, high five. If not, console log me the error. Again, more specific if we knew more about the application, how we wanted to deal with. But for now, straightforward, simple. So this is the, we are assuming here that the user got to this point. We should never assume. So yeah, we should never assume. Let's just leave it at that. And let's just console log user in the user component update user. I'm going to actually I'm going to comment those out just so we can see it. Let's create something, good working. Let's hit edit. Let's update a different way. Let's submit. And there is the new version with the longer text that I changed. Cool. Awesome. So I guess the reason why I did that is I just wanted to show that the object that came all the way from the inside of edit got all the way to the user component through two outputs. I wonder if there's a better way to do that, but that's the only and best way that I know how to do it at this point. Not sure of a way that you can go from two child components down all the way up to like one of the parents without doing this or some kind of a different way of emitting. So I'm not sure. Anyways, the user object now is still a user, so we can just do that there. As a matter of fact, we can just kind of go down the list, and every time we did that update, we know that's the user object. Yeah, cool. So user.component.ts. I just changed the type so we know it's update. So this should do the call to the server, server.js. When we are doing the update here, we're going to console log the ID and the body to make sure that the data came through the proper way. So let's do that. Let's change this to 1 to 3. Let's hit submit, and let's see what the server did here. Did we save? We did. User service calls an update. It does all this. User service itself for update is going to grab the user. It's do the HTTP put for /users/ID, and that. So the route is not running. This is a put /user/ID. Interesting. Let's try it one more time. Edit 1 1 1 submit. Oh, it's there. Maybe it just didn't refresh on time or something. So the ID is the ID, that's great, and then the object there is the object that's modified, but the ID mass stays the same. Cool. So we can call on user object dot update, I believe. So first parameter is the condition object. Second parameter is the object. Third parameter is a callback. Well, we know the callback is going to be the error and then updated user. Error, raw response. That's what it is called, raw, which is like the entire object, but it's really the, we're going to call this raw data. Raw data. Cool. I think in this raw data there's the actual object passed back, or I think that you can pass an option object here that it will give you the object. Yeah, and there's a way that essentially the update method, after it is done updating, through the callback, it will give you the updated object. We don't need it, but just to point out something. Okay, so the first parameter is how we're going to find the object. So we're going to say I want the ID to be the value of rect.params.id. And the second parameter is what we want to update to. Well, we want to update to this. Yeah, I think that's okay for now. I think if it was reality, I would be more careful because somebody on the front end could, in theory, pass us a post request that they modified the ID of the object. And so now we are changing the particular one. Maybe not. Well, I think this is a security issue there. I think just to make it work, I think it's fine now, but I guess my point being is here, I would actually explicitly pull out the whole object and say that I'm not going to change the ID, but first name is going to change to be the rect.body.first name. And I would do the same thing for last name, email, or everything I want to change explicitly, because right now I'm going to change everything on it. And I think that's okay. I think it will work, but just my point being is that it's not safe. So, but I'm doing it for demonstration purposes, not for production. So just that. Full server, refresh, edit, 1, 1, 1, submit, and it updated. Cool. That's it. So we are essentially done with CRUD operations from the client side to the server side. We made the routes, and every time we were meddling with the routes, we made sure that our service was making the right HTTP request. If it was either a delete, a put, a get, or a post, the right URL for it, the right parameter if it's because it's going to be a RESTful route. In this case, for example, it's the ID to the parameter and also the object itself as the body data. Make sure there are promises, make sure they're defined as JSON data, and the component was calling him and retrieving him, and then on the success, it was calling the get users block of code, which is this thing here, which is doing its own HTTP request. And again, yes, most all of these could have just passed back the new set of users from the server. So one request and response would update and grab the new set of users. Right now I'm doing 2 request responses, one to update, and then once the update was successful on the server, you'll do one more to grab all the users. We could have done that one step, but I wanted to keep it simple. Awesome, we don't need this block anymore, but we do need to keep the users array up here because the user component is going to be where we store all the data that is utilized for the user component and all of its child elements. Awesome.